Now, again, if you're going to interact with the scriptures of the Old and New Testament, and then interact with the pluralistic culture in which you live, which tells you from the time you're little children, there are many ways to God. It doesn't matter what you believe, whether you're a Buddhist or a Hindu or Confucian or a Taoist or whatever else. All these different roads go up to God. God has had many sons, many avatars, many manifestations or incarnations in this world. And we want to have this all-inclusive concept. It's on a collision course with what the Scriptures teach about salvation, that Christ is called the monogenes, the only begotten of the Father. Now, I've told the story before of what happened to me when I was a college student, and our professor in English, who was quite hostile, openly hostile to Christianity, asked me in front of the whole class, Mr. Sproul, do you think that Jesus is the only way to God? And I felt the stares of everybody in the class on me, and I knew I was in deep, deep trouble. Because if I say yes, then I'm a bigot. And if I say no, I'm a traitor. So I mumbled my answer. She said, what did you say? I said, yes, I think he's the only way. Oh. She came down on me. She said, that's the most arrogant, narrow-minded, bigoted statement I've ever heard. And she humiliated me before the class. And after class, I was leaving, I stopped at the door and I said to her, I know that you don't believe in Christianity, but do you think it's possible that a person could ever be truly persuaded that Jesus was at least one way to God? She said, well, yes, of course. And I said, well, if you're persuaded that Jesus is one way to God, and then you find out he tells you he's the only way to God, then what do you do? I said, if I thought he was the only way to God because he happens to be my way, and I'm saying that you have to believe my way or the highway, and only R.C. Sproul has the truth, then of course that would be the most arrogant, bigoted, narrow-minded thing you ever heard. But if I'm really persuaded that Jesus is the Christ, and he teaches that he's the only way, don't you see that I would be betraying him if I said to make you happy or the culture happy that there are many, many ways? Well, to her credit, she said, yes, I do see that. She said, but I have to say, how can you believe in a God that only gives one way? I said, well, that's the thing that amazes me. She said, what? That he gives a way. Why should he give one way? And what he has done, the extent to which he has gone to redeem a fallen world through the ministry of Christ, whose life and person isn't worthy to be compared with Buddha or Mohammed or Confucius or anyone else. They're all dead. None of them gave an atonement. None of them bore the sins of the world on their back before the judgment seat of God. And I said, if God sends his only Son into the world to bear every sin that you've ever committed, and he kills him in your place, and then says if you put your trust in him, he's going to forgive every sin that you've ever committed, and he's going to give you everlasting life so that you'll never die, that you will live forever with no more pain, with no more disease, with no more darkness, with no more trouble. And I said, and are you going to look at him and say, you haven't done enough? We are so arrogant that we demand that God gives us 5 doors into the sheepfold. And we reject Jesus' own teaching when he says, yes, there is a broad way. If you don't want to be narrow, there's a broad way. Broad is the way and wide is the door that leads to the sheepfold. No. That leads to destruction. And many there are who go in at that point. But Jesus said, narrow is the way and straight is the gate that leads to life, and few there be who find it. And so Jesus says, if you want to enter in, if you want to go to that place of safety, you have to come through me.